Pop open a bottle of bubbly. Yeah. Here's to another goddamn new year. And outside, 2 million drunk Bostonians are getting ready to sing Auld Lang Syne out of tune. I sit there in my easy chair, looking at the clouds, orange with celebration. I wonder if you're out there. Hey! The ice of Boston is muddy and reflects no light midday or night. And I slip on it every time. Open the third bottle of bubbly. Yeah, and I take that bottle of champagne, go into the kitchen, stand in front of the kitchen window, and I take all my clothes off, take that bottle of champagne, and I pour it on my head, feel a cascade through my hair and across my chest, and the phone rings. And it's my mother. And she says, "Hi, honey, how's Boston?" And I stand there all alone on New Year's Eve, buck naked, drenched in champagne, looking at a bunch of strangers, looking at them, looking at me, looking at them, and I say, "Oh, fine, Mom. How's Washington? Hey, the ice of Boston is muddy and reflects no light midday or night, and I slip on it every time." Hey, the ice of Boston is muddy and reflects no light midday or night, and I slip on it every time, time, yeah. So I guess the party line is I followed you up here. Well, I don't know about that. Mainly because knowing about that would involve knowing about some pathetic, ridiculous, and absolutely true things about myself. I'd rather not admit to right now. I woke up at 3 a.m. with the radio on, that Gladys Knight and the Pip song on, about how she'd rather live in his world with him than live in her own world alone. And I laid there, head spinning, trying to fall asleep, and I thought to myself, "Oh, Gladys, girl, I love you, but oh, get a life! Hey, the ice of Boston is muddy and reflects no light midday or night, and I slip on it every time." Hey, the ice of Boston is muddy and reflects no light midday or night, and I slip on it every time. Time, time, time. Time, time, time. Time, time, time. Time, time, time.
$1,610 ETA wage room, freestyle circuits, the clank and click of various resistance systems, Lyle on the towel dispenser conferring with an extremely moist Graham Raider. Shock doing sit-ups, the board almost vertical, his face purple and forehead pulsing. Trelch by the squat rack blowing his nose into a towel. Coyle doing military presses with a bare bar. Carol Spodek curling, intent on the mirror. Raider nodding as Lyle bends and leans in. Hal up on the spotter shelf in back of the inclined bench in the shadow of the monster copper beach through the west window doing single leg toe raises for the ankle. Ingersoll at the shoulder pole, steadily upping the weight against Lyle's advice. Keith, the Viking freer, and the steroidic 15-year-old Elliot Cornspan spotting each other on massive barbell curls next to the water cooler's bench, taking turns, bellowing encouragement. Hal keeps pausing to lean down and spit into an old NASA glass on the floor by the little shelf. ETA trainer Barry Loach walking around with a clipboard. He doesn't write anything down on, but watching people intently and nodding a lot. Exford with one shoe off in the corner doing something to his bare foot. Michael Pemulis seated cross-legged on the cooler's bench just off Cornspan's left hip, doing facial isometrics, trying to eavesdrop on Lyle and Raider, wincing whenever Cornspan and Freer roar at each other. 3 more! Get it up there! Oh, get that shit up there, man! I raped your sister. It killed your fucking mother, man. Do it. Pemulis makes his face very long for a while, and then very short and broad, then all sort of hollow and distended like one of Bacon's popes. Well, suppose, Pemulis can just make out Lyle, suppose I were to give you a keyring with 10 keys, with 100 keys, and I were to tell you that one of these keys will unlock it. This door we're imagining opening in onto all you want to be as a player. How many of the keys would you be willing to try? Trolch calls over to Pemulis. Do the lint jerking off face again. Pemulis for a second lets his mouth gape slackly and his eyes roll way up and flutters his lids, moving his fist. Well, I try every darn one. Raider tells Lyle. Girl, motherfucker, fucker. Pemulis' wince looks like a type of facial isometric. Do Bridget having a tantrum. Do shocked in a stall. Pemulis makes a shush finger. Lyle never whispers, but it's about the same. Then you are willing to make mistakes, you see. You're saying you will accept 99% error. The paralyzed perfectionist you say you are would stand there before that door, jingling the keys, afraid to try the first key. Pemulis pulls his lower lip down as far as it will go and contracts his cheek muscles. Cords stand out on Freer's neck as he screams at Cornspan. There's a little hanging mist of spittle and sweat. Cornspan looks like he's about to have a stroke. There are 90 kilograms on the bar, which itself is 20 kilograms. One more, you fucking take it. Fuck me, you fuck, take the pain. Freer has one finger under the bar, barely helping. Cornspan's red face is leaping around on his skull. Carol Spodek's smaller bar goes silently up and down. Trelch comes over and sits down and saws at the back of his neck with a towel, looking up at Cornspan. I don't think all the curls I've ever done altogether add up to 110, he said. Cornspan's making sounds that don't sound like they're coming from his throat. Yes, yes, roars Freer. The bar crashes to the rubber floor, making Pemulis wince. Every vein on Cornspan stands out and pulses. His stomach looks pregnant. He puts his hands on his thighs and leans forward, a string of something hanging from his mouth. Way to fucking take it, baby, Freer says, going over to the box on the dispenser to get rosin for his hands, watching himself walk toward the mirror. Pemulis starts very slowly to lean over toward Cornspan, looking around, confidentially. He gets so his face is right up near the side of Cornspan's mesomorphic head and whispers, Hey, Elliot. Hey. Cornspan, bent over, chest heaving, rolls his head a little his way. Pemulis whispers, Pussy. If by the virtue of charity or the circumstance of desperation you ever chance to spend a little time around a substance recovery halfway facility like Enfield, MA's state-funded Ennet House, you will acquire many exotic new facts. You will find out that once MA's Department of Social Services has taken a mother's children away for any period of time, they can always take them away again. DSS, like at will, empowered by nothing more than a certain signature stamped form, i.e. once deemed unfit, no matter why or when or what's transpired in the meantime, there's nothing a mother can do. Or, for instance, that people addicted to a substance who abruptly stop ingesting the substance often suffer wicked papular acne, often for months afterward, as the accumulations of substance slowly leave the body. The staff will inform you that this is because the skin is actually the body's biggest excretory organ, or that chronic alcoholics' hearts are, for reasons no MD has been able to explain, swollen to nearly twice the size of civilians' human hearts, and they never again return to normal size. That there's a certain type of person who carries a picture of their therapist in their wallet. That, both a relief and kind of an odd letdown. Black penises tend to be the same general size as white penises on the whole. That not all U.S. males are circumcised. That you can cop a sort of thin, jittery, amphetaminic buzz if you rapidly consume 3 millennial fizzies and a whole package of Oreo cookies on an empty stomach. Keeping it down is required, however, for the buzz, which senior residents often neglect to tell newer residents. That the chilling Hispanic term for whatever interior disorder drives the addict back again and again to the enslaving substance is tecato gusano, which apparently connotes some kind of interior psychic worm that cannot be sated or killed. That black and Hispanic people can be as big or bigger racists than white people, and then can get even more hostile and unpleasant when this realization seems to surprise you. That it is possible in sleep for some roommates to secure a cigarette from their bedside pack, light it, smoke it down to the quick, and then extinguish it in their bedside ashtray without once waking up and without setting anything on fire. You will be informed that this skill is usually acquired in penal institutions, which will lower your inclination to complain about the practice. Or that even Flint's industrial-strength expandable foam earplugs do not solve the problem of a snoring roommate if the roommate in question is so huge and so adenoidal that the snores in question also produce subsonic vibrations that arpeggio up and down your body and make your bunk jiggle like a motel bed you've put a quarter in. That females are capable of being just as vulgar about sexual and eliminatory functions as males, that over 60% of all persons arrested for drug and alcohol-related offenses report being sexually abused as children, with 2/3 of the remaining 40% reporting that they cannot remember their childhoods in sufficient detail to report one way or the other on abuse. That you can weave hypnotic Madame Psychosis-like harmonies around the minor D scream of a cheap vacuum cleaner, humming to yourself as you vacuum, if that's your chore, that some people really do look like rodents, that some drug-addicted prostitutes have a harder time giving up prostitution than they have giving up drugs, with their explanation involving the two habits' very different directions of currency flow, that there are just as many idioms for the female sex organ as there are for the male sex organ, that a little-mentioned paradox of substance addiction is that once you are sufficiently enslaved by a substance, to need to quit the substance in order to save your life, the enslaving substance has become so deeply important to you that you will all but lose your mind when it's taken away from you, or that sometime after your substance of choice had just been taken away from you in order to save your life, as you hunker down for required AM and PM prayers, you will find yourself beginning to pray to be allowed literally to lose your mind, to be able to wrap your mind in an old newspaper or something and leave it in an alley to shift for itself without you. That in Metro Boston, the idiom of choice for the male sex organ is unit, which is why Ennet House residents are wryly amused by EMPH Hospital's designations of its campus buildings. That certain persons simply will not like you no matter what you do, then that most non-addicted adult civilians have already absorbed and accepted this fact, often rather early on. That no matter how smart you are, how smart you thought you were, you're actually way less smart than that. That AA and NA and CA's God does not apparently require that you believe in him, her, it before he, she, it will help you. That patze macho bullshit public male weeping is not only plenty masculine but can actually feel good, reportedly. That sharing means talking, and that taking somebody's inventory means criticizing that person. Plus many additional pieces of recovery speak that an important part of halfway house human immunovirus prevention is not leaving your razor or toothbrush in communal bathrooms. That apparently a seasoned prostitute can, reportedly, apply a condom to a customer's unit so deftly he doesn't even know it's on until he's history, so to speak. That a double-layered steel portable strong box with tri-tumbler lock for your razor and toothbrush can be had for under $35 US, $38.50 ONAN via HomeNet hardware, and that Pet M, or the house manager, will let you use the back office's old TP to order one if you put up a sustained enough squawk. That over 50% of persons with a substance addiction suffer from some other recognized form of psychiatric disorder too. That some male prostitutes become so accustomed to enemas that they cannot have valid bowel movements without them. That a majority of Enid House residents have at least one tattoo. That the significance of this datum is unanalyzable. That the Metro Boston street term for not having any money is sporting lint. That what elsewhere is known as informing or squealing or nursing or ratting out is, on the streets of Metro Boston, known as eating cheese, presumably spun off from the associative nexus of rat. That nose, tongue, lip, and eyelid rings rarely require actual penetrative piercing. This is because of the wide variety of clip-on rings available. That nipple rings do require piercing, and that clitoris and glans rings are not things anyone thinks you really want to know the facts about. That sleeping can be a form of emotional escape and can, with sustained effort, be abused. The female Chicanos are not called Chicanas. That it costs $225 US to get a MA driver's license with your picture, but not your name. That purposeful sleep deprivation can also be an abusable escape. That gambling can be an abusable escape too, and work, shopping, shoplifting, sex, abstention, masturbation, food, exercise, meditation, prayer, and sitting so close to Enid House old DEC TP cartridge viewer that the screen fills your whole vision, and the screen's static charge tickles your nose like a linty mitten. That you do not have to like a person in order to learn from him, her, it. That loneliness is not a function of solitude. That it is possible to get so angry you really do see everything red. What a Texas catheter is. That some people really do will steal things that are yours. That a lot of US adults truly cannot read, not even a ROM hypertext phonics thing with help functions for every word. That cliquey alliance and exclusion and gossip can be forms of escape. That logical validity is not a guarantee of truth. That evil people never believe they're evil, but rather that everyone else is evil. That it is possible to learn valuable things from a stupid person. That it takes effort to pay attention to any one stimulus for more than a few seconds. That you can all of a sudden, out of nowhere, want to get high with your substance so bad that you think you will surely die if you don't, but can't just sit there with your hands writhing in your lap and face wet with craving, can want to get high, but instead just sit there wanting to, but not, if that makes sense. And if you could got it out and not hit the substance during the craving, then the craving will eventually pass. It will go away, at least for a while. That it is statistically easier for low IQ people to kick an addiction than it is for high IQ people. That the Metro Boston street terms for panhandling is stemming. And that it is little professional colloquia sometimes and that it is regarded by some as a craft or art. And that professional STEM artists actually have like little professional colloquia sometimes, little conventions in parks or public transport hubs at night where they get together and network and exchange feedback on trends and techniques and public relations, etc. That it is possible to abuse OTC cold and allergy remedies in an addictive manner. That NyQuil is over 50% proof that boring activities become perversely much less boring if you concentrate intently on them. That if enough people in a silent room are drinking coffee, it is possible to make out the sound of steam coming off the coffee. That sometimes human beings have to sit in one place and hurt. That you will become way less concerned with what other people think of you when you realize how seldom they do. That there is such a thing as raw, unalloyed, agendaless kindness, that it is possible to fall asleep during an anxiety attack. That concentrating intently on anything is very hard work. That addiction is either a disease or a mental illness or a spiritual condition, as in poor of spirit, or an OCD-like disorder, or an affective or character disorder, and that over 75% of the veteran Boston AAs who want to convince you that it is a disease will make you sit down and watch them write disease on a paper, and then divide the hyphenate the word so it becomes dis-ease. Then will stare at you as if expecting you to undergo some kind of blinding, epiphanic realization when really, as G. Day points tirelessly out to his counselors, changing disease to dis-ease reduces a definition and explanation down to a simple description of a feeling, and rather a whiny, insipid one at that. The most substance-addicted people are also addicted to thinking, meaning they have a compulsive and unhealthy relationship with their own thinking. That the cute Boston AA term for addictive type thinking is analysis paralysis. That cats will in fact get violent diarrhea if you feed them milk. Contrary to the popular image of cats and milk, that it is simply more pleasant to be happy than to be pissed off. That 99% of compulsive thinkers thinking it is about themselves. That 99% of this self-directed thinking consists of imaging and then getting ready for things that are going to happen to them. And then, weirdly, that if they stop to think about it, that 100% of the things they spend 99% of their time and energy thinking and imagining and trying to prepare for all the contingencies and consequences of are never good. Then that this connects interestingly with the early sobriety urge to pray for the literal loss of one's mind. In short, that 99% of the head's thinking activity consists of trying to scare the ever-living shit out of itself. That is possible to make it rather tasty poached eggs in the microwave oven. That the Metro Street term for really quite wonderful is pisser. That everyone's sneeze sounds different. That some people's moms never taught them to cover up or turn away when they sneeze. That no one who has been to prison is ever the same again. That you do not have to have sex with a person to get crabs from them. That a clean room feels better to be in that dirty room. That the people to be most frightened of are the people who are the most frightened. That it takes great personal courage to let yourself appear weak. That you don't have to hit somebody even if you really, really want to. That no single individual moment is in and of itself unendurable. That nobody who's ever gotten sufficiently addictively enslaved by a substance to need to quit the substance and has successfully quit it for a while and been straight but then has, for whatever reason, gone back and picked up the substance again, has ever reported being glad that they did use the substance again, and again gotten re-enslaved. Not ever. That bit is a Metro Boston street term for a jail sentence, as in Don G was up in Billerica on a 6-month bit. That it's impossible to kill fleas by hand, that it's possible to smoke so many cigarettes that you get little white ulcerations on your tongue, that the effects of too many cups of coffee are in no way pleasant or intoxicating, that pretty much everybody masturbates, rather a lot, it turns out, that the cliche, I don't know who I am, unfortunately turns out to be more than a cliche, that it costs $330 US to get a passport in a phony name, that other people can often see things about you that you yourself cannot see, even if those people are stupid, that you can obtain a major credit card with a phony name for $1,500 US, but that no one will give you a straight answer about whether this price includes a verifiable credit history and line of credit, or when the cashier slides the phony card through the register's little verification modem with all sorts of burly security guards standing around. That having a lot of money does not immunize people from suffering or fear. That trying to dance sober is a whole different kettle of fish. That the term vig is street argot for the bookmaker's commission to an illegal bet, usually 10%, that's either subtracted from your winnings or added to your debt. That certain sincerely devout and spiritually advanced people believe that the God of their understanding helps them find parking places and gives them advice on Massachusetts lottery numbers. The cockroaches can, up to a certain point, be lived with. That acceptance is usually more a matter of fatigue than anything else. That different people have radically different ideas of basic personal hygiene. That, perversely, it is more often fun to want something than you have it. That if you did it for, know it was you or anybody else, know that what it was you did, or in any way or form trying to get credit for, it's almost its own form of intoxicating buzz. That anonymous generosity, too, can be abused. That having sex with someone you do not care for feels lonelier than not having sex in the first place afterward. That it is permissible to want. That everybody is identical in their secret unspoken belief that way deep down they are different from everyone else. That it isn't necessarily perverse. That there might not be angels, but there are people who might as well be angels. That God, unless you're Charlton Heston or unhinged or both, speaks and acts entirely through the vehicle of human beings, if there is a God. That God might regard the issue of whether you believe there's a God or not as fairly low on its list of things it's interested in regards to you. That the smell of athlete's foot is sick, sweet, versus the smell of podiatric dry rot is sick, sour. That a person, one with the disease, ease, will do things under the influence of substances that he simply would not ever do if he would be sober. And that some consequences of these things cannot ever be erased or amended. Here's a quick example of this. Felonies are an example of this, as are tattoos. Almost always gotten on impulse, tattoos are vividly, chillingly permanent. The shop-worn act in haste, repent at leisure would seem to have been almost custom designed for the case of tattoos. For a while, the new resident, Tiny Ewell, got first keenly interested and then weirdly obsessed with people's tattoos. And he started going around to all the residents and outside people who hung around Enid House to help keep straight, asking to check out their tattoos and wanting to hear about the circumstances surrounding each tattoo. These little spasms of obsession, like first with the exact definition of alcoholic and then with Morris H.'s special Toll House cookies until the pancreatus flare, then with the exact kinds of corners everybody made their bed up with, these were part of the way Tiny E temporarily lost his mind when his enslaving substance was taken away. The tattoo thing started out with Tiny's white-collar amazement at just how many of the folks around Enid House seemed to have tattoos. And the tattoos seemed like potent symbols of not only whatever they were pictures of, but also of the chilling irrevocability of intoxicated impulses. Because the whole thing about tattoos is that they're permanent, of course, irrevocable once gotten, which of course the irrevocability of a tattoo is what jacks up the adrenaline of the intoxicated decision to sit down in a chair and actually get it, the tattoo. But the chilling thing about the intoxication is that it seems to make you consider only the adrenaline of the moment itself, not in any depth the irrevocability that produces the adrenaline. It's like the intoxication keeps your tattoo type class person from being able to project his imagination past the adrenaline of the impulse and even consider the permanent consequences that are producing the buzz of excitement. Tiny Yules put this same abstract but not very profound idea in a whole number of varied ways, over and over, obsessively almost, and still failed to get any of the tattooed residents interested, although Bruce Green will listen politely, and the clinically depressed Kate Gompert usually won't have the juice to get up and walk away when Tiny starts in, which makes Yule seek her out a vis-a-vis tattoos, though she hasn't got a tattoo. But they don't have any problem with showing Tiny their tats. The residents with tattoos don't, unless they're female and the thing is in some sort of area where there's a boundary issue. As Tiny Yule comes to see it, people with tattoos fall under two broad headings. First, there are the younger, scrofulous, bone-headed black t-shirt and spiked bracelet types, who do not have the sense or regret the impulsive permanency of their tats, and will show them off to you with the same fake, quiet pride with which someone more of Yule's own social stratum would show off their collection of dynastic crockery or fine Sauvignon. Then there are the more numerous and older second types who will show you their tattoos with the sort of stoic regret, albeit tinged with a bit of self-conscious pride about the stoicism, that a purple-hearted veteran displays toward his old wounds, scars. Resident Wade McDade, for example, has complex nests of blue and red serpents running down the inside of both arms, and is required to wear long-sleeve t-shirts every day to his menial job at Store 24, even though the store's heat always loses its mind in the early AM, and it's always wicked motherfucking hot in there because the store's Pakistani manager believes his customers will not wish to purchase Marlboro Lights and Massachusetts Gigabucks lottery tickets from someone with vascular-colored snakes writhing all over his arms. McDade also has a flaming skull on his left shoulder blade. Donnie Glynn has the faint remains of a black dotted line tattooed all the way around his neck at about Adam's apple height, with instruction manual-like directions for the removal of his head and maintenance of the disengaged head tattooed on his skull from the days of his skinhead youth, which now the tattooed directions take patience and a comb and 3 of April Cordeleu's barrettes for Tiny even to see. Actually, the couple weeks into the obsession, Yuli broadens his thermotaxonomy to include a third category, bikers, of whom there are presently none in Enid House, but plenty around the area's AA meetings in beards and leather vests, and apparently having to meet some kind of weight requirement of at least 200 kilos. Bikers is the Metro Boston street art term for them, though they seem to refer themselves usually as scooter puppies, a term which Eel finds out the hard way, non-bikers are not invited to use. These guys are veritable one-man tattoo festivals, but when they show them to you, they're disconcerting because they'll bear their tats with the complete absence of affect of somebody just showing you like a limb or a thumb, not quite sure what you want to see or even hear what it is you're looking at. All like like NB that Ewell ends up inserting under the heading biker is that every professional tattooist, everybody who can remember getting their tattoos, remembers getting them from the sound of everybody's general descriptions, a biker. Will write the Stoic Regret group within Enid House. It emerges that the male tattoos with women's names on them tend, in their irrevocability, to be especially disastrous and regretful, given the extremely provisional nature of most addicts' relationships. Bruce Green will have Mildred Bonk on his jilted right triceps forever. Likewise, the doors in red, dripping Gothic script just below the left breast of Emil Minty, who, yes, apparently did love once. Minty also has a palsied and amateur swastika with the caption "fuck niggers" on a left biceps. He's hardly encouraged to keep covered as a resident. Chandler Foss has an undulating banner with a redly inscribed Mary on one forearm. Said banner now mangled and necrotic because Foss, dumped and badly coked out last night, tried to nullify the romantic connotations of the tat by inscribing Blessed Virgin above the Mary with a razor blade and a red bic, with predictably ghastly results. Real tattoo artist, Huel gets this on authority after a white flag group meeting from a biker whose triceps tattoo of a huge disembodied female breast being painfully squeezed by a disembodied hand, which itself is tattooed with a disembodied breast and a hand, communicates real tattoo credibility as far as Tiny is concerned. Real tat artists are always highly trained professionals. What's said about the gorgeous violet arrow-pierced heart with Pamela incised in a circle around it on Randy Lentz's right hip is that Lentz has no memory either of the tattoo impulse and procedure or of anybody named Pamela. Charlotte Treat has a small green dragon on her calf and another tattoo on her breast. She set a boundary about letting Tiny see. Hester Thrall has an amazingly detailed blue and green tattoo of the planet Earth on her stomach, its poles, a budding pubis, and breasts, an equatorial view of which cost Tiny Yule 2 weeks of doing Hester's weekly chore. Overall, searing regret honors probably go to Jennifer Belbin, who has 4 uncoverable black teardrops descending from the corner of one eye from one night of mescaline and adrenalized grief, so that from more than 2 meters away she always looks like she has flies on her, Randy Lentz points out. The new black girl, DDN, has on the plane of her upper abdomen a tattered screaming skull of the same stencil as McDade's, but without the flames. It's creepy because it's just a tattered white outline. Black people's tattoos are rare, and for reasons Yule regards as fairly obvious, they tend to be just white outlines. Enid House alumnus and volunteer counselor Kelvin Thrust is quietly rumored to have on the shaft of his formerly professional porn cartridge performer's unit a tattoo that displays the majuscule initials CT when the unit is flaccid and the full Kelvin Thrust when hyperemic. Tiny Yule has soberly elected to let this go unsubstantiated. Alumna and VC Daniel Steenbook once got the bright idea of having eyeliner-colored tattoos put around both eyes so she'd never again have to apply eyeliner, not banking on the inevitable fate that over time turned the tattoos a kind of nauseous dark green. She now has to constantly apply eyeliner to cover up. Current female live-in staffer Jeanette Foltz has undergone 2 of the 6 painful procedures required to have the snarling orange and blue tiger removed from her left forearm, and so now has a snarling tiger minus a head and one front leg with the ablated parts looking like someone determined has been at her forearm with steel wool. Yule decides this is what gives profundity to the tattoo impulse's profound irrevocability. Having a tat removed means just exchanging one kind of disfigurement for another. There are Tingley and Deal's identical palmate cannabis leaf on an inner wrist tattoos, though Tingley and Deal are from opposite shores and never crossed paths before entering the house. Nell Gunter refuses to discuss tattoos with Tiny Yule in any way or form. For a while, Tiny Yule considers live-in staffer Don Gately's homemade jailhouse tattoos too primitive to even bother asking about. He's made a true pest of himself, though, Yule did, when at the height of the obsession, this one synthetic narc-addicted kid came in who refused to be called anything but a street name, Skull, and lasted only like 4 days, but who'd been a walking exhibition of high regret ink. Both arms tattooed with spider webs at the elbows, on his fishy white chest, and a naked lady with the same kind of overlush measurements. Yule remembered from the pinball machines of his Waterton childhood. On Skull's back, a half-meter-long skeleton in a black robe and cowl playing the violin in the wind on a crag with the dead in maroon on a vertical gonfalonish banner unfurling below. On one biceps, either an ice pick or a mukrana dagger, and down both forearms a kind of Saint Vitus's dance of leather winged dragons with the words on both forearms, "How'd you like your blue-eyed boy now, Mr. Death?" The typos of which Tiny felt only served to heighten Skull's whole General Tat's Gestalt's intended effect, which Tiny presumed was primarily to repel. In fact, Tiny E's whole displacement of obsession from bunks, hospitals, corners to people's tattoos was probably courtesy of this kid Skull, who on his second night in the newer male residence 5-man room had shed his electrified muscle shirt and was showing off his tattoos in a boneheaded, regretless first-category fashion to Ken Erdely, while R. Lenz did headstands against the closet door in his jockstrap, and Yule and Joffrey D. had their wallets, credit cards spread out on Yule's drum-tight bunk and were trying to settle a kind of admittedly childish argument about who had the more prestigious credit cards, Skull flexing his pectorals to make the overdeveloped woman on his chest reef, reading his forearms to Erdely, etc. And Jeffrey Day had looked up from his Amex gold to Yule's platinum and shaken his moist, pale head at Yule and asked rhetorically what had ever happened to good old traditional U.S. tattoos like Mom or an anchor, which for some reason touched off a small obsessive explosion in Yule's detox-frazzled psyche. Probably the most poignant items in Yule's survey are the much-faded tattoos of old Boston AA guys who've never been sober in the fellowship for decades, the crocodilic elder statesmen of the White Flag and Ulster groups, and the St. Columkill Sunday night group, and Yule's chosen home group, Wednesday's night Better Late Than Never group, non-smoking, at St. Elizabeth's Hospital just 2 blocks down from the house. There is something queerly poignant about a deeply faded tattoo, a poignancy, something along the lines of coming upon the tiny and poignantly unfashionable clothes of a child long since grown up in a dark attic trunk somewhere. The clothes, not the grown child, Yule confirmed for G-Day. See, for example, White Flag's cantankerous old Francis, ferocious Francis, Gehani's right forearm's tat of a martini glass, with a naked lady sitting in the glass with her legs kicking up over the broad, flaring rim, with an old-style Rita Hayworth-era bangs intensive hairstyle, faded to a kind of underwater blue. Its indicated black lines gone soot green, and the red of the lips, nails, subkibai 62 USN 4-07 nut lightened to pink up more like decayed to the dusty red of fire through much smoke. All these old sober Boston blue collar men's irrevocable tattoos fading almost observably under the low-budget fluorescence of church basement and hospital auditoria. Yule watched and charted and cross-referenced them, moved. Any number of good old USN anchors, and in Irish Boston, sooty green shamrocks and several little frozen tableaux of little khaki and figures in GI helmets, plunging bayonets into the stomachs of hideous urine yellow bucktooth oriental caricatures and screaming eagles with their claws faded blunt. And September, Semper Fi, all lies to the point where the tattoos look like they're just under the surface of a murky type pond.
Hört mir zu.